We've got Rick and Judy. How did you get that flag? That is brilliant. How did you do that?
2 sheets of paper.
2 sheets of colored paper
Really?
done by Rick. What I did, I'll go get what I did. I made this today.
Oh, that's lovely too.
I was going to hang it around my neck.
Send us a picture of that for the weekly.
Of this
No, this.
or of this?
That.
Okay, will do.
Sometime all right. Some announcements for everybody before we begin. Sam has been sending out a long-range planning committee survey one last time. If you haven't filled it out, if you would please, because the planning committee is meeting one last time with Tyler Coles as they wrap up their own filling out that form, and just want to be sure what they had matches what the rest of you say as well. I sent out Michelle's biography. Michelle is the other chaplain I told you about. She's from Illinois. She is a hospice chaplain, a grief chaplain. She and Besa went to the same seminary and graduated roughly the same time. They are the same age as it turns out. She sent a biography, and she is going to begin a process of affiliating with us as well. I sent you the Friedman article because I wanted you to read 2 things that I thought were brilliant that has changed a lot of things. One is this war is the first war that is wired, and everything's on TikTok, and you see things as they happen in real time. So when somebody says, "Oh, we're not damaging anything civilian," you just see a rocket in real time hit an apartment house, or no civilians are answered. You see people dead. Although it's happened in real time. This is the first time I've seen anybody from an opposing group have their entire general staff's names put out for the whole world to see, their addresses, email addresses, and everything else. Anonymous attacked and hacked the major addresses of the Russian general staff. I mean, nobody's ever done this before. And it turns out that for the first time ever, a group of people in NATO are finally working together, and it just turns, this is going to be interesting. The Brits have just said anybody who wants to volunteer is welcome to go. That will open another interesting route. The other thing is, for the first time, the world is globally connected banking-wise. And the sanctions, nobody expected the sanctions would include SWIFT, and you need to read about that, about how dramatic that is. So this has not turned out to be the way they thought it would be. And in case, by the way, for those of you who follow military things, the Russian advance has not met its goals as of right now. Many of their tanks and trucks have run out of gas. Number 2, the supply lines have been hit by ordinary citizens acting as guerrillas. It turns out the Brits supplied the Ukrainians with Stinger missiles that came from us, and the Germans did an about-face and have now allowed their military-made equipment to go to Ukraine. This has all changed everything, and everything changes by, and it goes to show you when you get a large country where citizens love to vote, they love to have a say in something. Did you see their president, by the way, is a comedian by background, not a politician. And he's turned out to have a background of iron. So there you go. Besa's with us this morning. Besa, by the way, I want you to know, is into plants. She's going to be doing a thing for us later in the spring. And she has 1,222 plants just on one side of her left side and 1 million plants on her right side. I'm not making this up. Good morning, Besa. Hal and Linda are with us. Barbara Young, I owe an apology to. Yesterday we had class and I totally messed up how to log in. I can't believe I did that. Barbara and other were casualties when we logged out and people couldn't log back. It was a mess. Basically, I put my own name in when I logged in, which you're not supposed to do. I'm supposed to put All Souls Miami when I'm the host. Totally forgot that and wound up screwing everything up for 15 minutes and we lost people. Sorry about that, Barbara Young. It was my fault. Moving along. Upcoming topics for All Souls: healing acceptance, and renewal. Healing, acceptance, and renewal. Please remember to send in pics. And look, I don't ever mention this often. You know that. I hate talking about money, but if you could remember to send us something when you can, it's deeply appreciated, either by check. Several of you do. I thank you for that. I have a phobia about mentioning money, but please, if you can, we deeply, deeply appreciate it. Now, we don't often do this, but we have had a lot of people in need of, now see if I can maneuver this. In some congregations, they use the word prayer. Other congregations don't like the word prayer. They say thoughts. I think this is, quite frankly, silly. You could have thought prayers. What's the difference between a good thought and a good prayer? They're thought prayers. So for those of you who like good thoughts, for those of you who like prayers, or like I say it, thought prayers, I want you to remember in your thought prayers the following, without going into details. But we've had a lot of people in need of your loves, your thoughts, and one person who I can't mention, who's at the other UU, who is well known by many of us for a long, long time and has had a long, hard life and is a wonderful person. I'm not going to mention her name, but just keep her in your thoughts and prayers. In our own family, Pat, Melissa, Ed, Pam, the Wallachs, David Newman, Kay and Don Schweitzer, and I will also give thanks for Maureen's surgery and recovery. So these are all people who are in need of some thought and prayer.
Thank you.
And just remember that we have people every day who I contact with, and this is what we do. You can have all this music in the world, all the sermons in the world, but if you don't offer each other love and care, you might as well close shop. It's that simple. It's that simple today. If you don't have love and prayer and honest, genuine support, you might as well close the doors and close Zoom. Hey, the Andersons are with us again. They just had an anniversary. I think they've been married 122 years, if I've got this correctly. All right, I'll pay for that. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We light the memorial candle for several. We light the memorial candle for Ukraine. We light the memorial candle for those innocents and civilians who have perished in the Ukraine. And here's one we light the candle for: Russian protesters. There has never been as many people protesting in Russia in large numbers as there has been in the last week. And we remember them in our prayers as well. So for protesters, for those who have, the innocents who have died, and for a country that's trying to maintain its democracy in the face of untold aggression, we offer our prayers and our candle. We have a rousing way to begin today. And if you would, Donald, a group you all remember. For those of you who might wonder who that is a 78-year-old ball of fire who asked, when you rose up this morning, what a way to begin a service. And good morning, Cindy and Larry Deach from Port Orange. For those of you who wish, if you would join with me in the call to worship, we'll read it all together if you would be so kind. Now we are waiting in the dark to see if someone will switch on the light. We can cower, we can fear, we can get lost together or get lost alone. But the truth is, I am the light, you are the light, we are lit up together. We are silhouettes of sunlight cast against the night. Shining now, let us hold the light so that our families can find us shining. And for those of you who would read with me together the morning thought and prayer, may the way of the divine pilot us. May the healing of the divine preserve us. May the wisdom of the divine instruct us. May the strength of the divine protect us. May the love of the divine direct us and guide us. Amen. Angie will be reading with us this morning, and I've asked her to read the first reading, a Jesus prayer, the Jesus prayer revised by Fred Kelp. If you would be kind enough to read that for us, Angie.
Indwelling God, who art infused throughout all existence, we hallow thee with many names. Thy kingdom is within the human heart. We accept life for all that it can be on earth as throughout all creation. May we continue to draw sustenance from this earth, and may we receive forgiveness equal to our own. May we evermore, from separation toward union, to live in grace with love in our hearts forever and ever. Amen.
And then Angie's going to read the first part of the responsive reading, and I will lead us in the part that's indented with caps. If you would, Angie.
We must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power of love.
There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate.
Forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future.
To forgive is to set the prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you.
It is not forgive and forget, as if nothing wrong ever happened, but forgive and go forward.
Building on the mistakes of the past and the energy generated by reconciliation to create a new future. All know, forgiveness of oneself is the hardest of all forgivenesses. And if you would continue reading a rainbow prayer.
Great rainbow arch, your bright light, your 7 colors, your cool dew, link sky and earth. Hold us all in your encompassing arms. Forgive our exclusion of others, earth and life and child. So may we too forgive those who have excluded us. Save us from the darkness. Show us the light. For the light and the colors and the dew, all space and time, and your 7-fold rainbow compassion dwell ever in God.
The next song, by the way, is an example of how things happen in an unexpected way. Smith and Thell and the Swedish Jam Factory. Yes, you heard that. Wait till you listen to the song. It's really good. Before I have an opening prayer, this is a time I want to thank all of you for enabling us to go with Zoom and learning new things. If it hadn't been for this congregation's openness and willing to try new things, we would never go on Zoom, and I would have never had to look for music the way I've looked for music. And I stumbled across that magnificent piece by accident. And I thought how wonderful I am surrounded by people who encourage me to go outside the box and traditional kinds of music and look for things. And I'm trying to think of congregations I've had in the past who are wonderful, wonderful people, but I'm trying to explain, I think to myself, how would I ever explain Smith and Thell and the Swedish Jam Factory during the Sunday morning service? And here we can do that. So I want to thank you for helping me go outside the box to learn new things and to share music with you that fits. What a lovely, lovely song. How accurate. Grant us, we ask, to speak, to hear, and to learn, so that our fears may be banished, our minds may become enlightened, our faith be increased, and our steps directed towards you. Amen. Sometimes people wonder, how do you ever choose sermon topics or theme topics? And the scary thought is, I don't know. I mean, I will go through periods where, to quote from the book of Samuel, the word of the Lord was rare in those days, or to put it in other ways, inspiration had dried up. And just when I think I have no ideas whatsoever, inevitably it comes across, I do some rummaging around and I look at things and I thought, oh, of course we're going to have, where was this thing? Of course we're going to have forgiveness healing, acceptance, and reward. Why not? Where that came from, I have no idea. That's the good news. The bad news is you're the ones who have to follow this and wonder, where does he get this stuff from? I'm not sure. That should scare all of you because it scares me. Talking about forgiveness today is an interesting thing because it's one of those things that you and I have heard over and over and over again, no matter what congregation we've ever been in, no matter where we've read, part of health is for learning to forgive. But you know, the reality is this is not one of those sermons where you are imagining somebody in a powdered wig, a black robe, and preaching bands shaming everybody because you haven't forgiven. The reality is forgiveness is hard. The reality is sometimes you can't forgive, and the reality is sometimes a work in progress. So let me be honest about that and say it up front. This is not going to be one of those shaming, yelling screeds where you all have to get on your stuff together and forgive now. It doesn't work like that. And I look at forgiveness and I'm thinking, okay, where do we begin? The self, forgiving the self, or forgiving others. So I figured let's start with the easy. It turned out not to be easy at all. How do you forgive others? And you know, I looked at some things in the United States and I was wondering how, if you are if you're a Native American, do you forgive the fact that not only did whites who were coming in do horrible things, but the country doesn't seem to know about it? And me pleading ignorance, went looking, and I came across something that absolutely horrified me. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the Bear Creek Massacre. It is the worst massacre of Native Americans in the history of this country. In 1863, in wintertime, when Native Americans the Shoshone, were camping for wintertime, the American U.S. military fell on the camp, totally unarmed and stuff like this, and killed 350 people, including 90 women and children. It was so horrific that lieutenants under the command of the commander went and filed a complaint. Others filed a complaint and said there was no cause for this. There were all kinds of congressional whatevers, but because during it was the Civil War, nothing was said. And we said this was horrible, it was bad, but nobody was ever brought to trial. That does not include, of course, some of the other great things that happened, including Colorado Sand Creek and Wounded Knee. But I'd never heard of the Bear Creek Massacre. And I'm thinking, that's just lovely. How do you forgive something like that? How do you forgive a country that doesn't own up to its mistakes? And I'm thinking, you know, this plays an interesting role. My grandfather's full-blooded Mohawk. The Mohawks didn't have to forgive anybody because they never lost. It's interesting. But what if you're out in the plains and you're camping and you have this, and we didn't know nothing about it. And where do you forgive all of this? Then I looked at African Americans. We all now know about Tulsa. How many of us didn't know what happened in Tulsa? How many of us never knew that? I didn't. Yes, I didn't know about that until a few years ago. And I'm thinking, nice clause. You're supposed to be a man of the cloth, whatever that may mean. And you didn't even know something about that. And then I looked at Florida. Have you looked at Florida's history with African Americans? I cannot pronounce the name of this town, Ocee. A woman complained, and there was nobody to back this up, a woman complained that a black had molested her. A huge number of whites, believing this without any verification, went in and basically slaughtered all the African Americans they could find in this town. The governor, listening to a report, said it was really nothing, went and played golf, went on a vacation. Let's not forget, of course, Rosewood, which happened in 1923. Just saying, if you look at the history of African-American treatment, and now you're getting people in the country say, don't mention that, you're going to make me feel uncomfortable. You want to feel uncomfortable? I'll make you feel uncomfortable. Come to this congregation, I'll help you feel uncomfortable. They give a history of what happened in this country to Africa, and some people are afraid, well, I don't want to feel uncomfortable about that. Really? How do you forgive? Then I look at the Holocaust victims. Holocaust victims And you know, Jews died in the Holocaust, but so did 2 million Poles, Roma, mentally ill. And here's one for you. Did you know that the Evangelical Church of Germany lost 900 of its best pastors? It said after the Holocaust, it took the German Protestant church a whole generation to replace the clergy they lost because they protested. The Holocaust consumed, but which Holocaust? What about the Armenians? And what happened in Cambodia with its own? How do you forgive this? How do you forgive? And these are hard questions. And now we look at Ukraine. How do you begin to forgive when you take a look at somebody who I listened to the speech that Mr. Putin gave, and I thought, this is totally unhinged. Somebody has rewritten a history that doesn't exist and is loaded with resentment and grievance. And then in our own country, a former president thinks this is savvy and cool. I mean, how do you begin? And then you see innocent people dying. How do you begin to forgive that? So when we look at others, I ask the question, how? Then comes a tough one. How do we begin to forgive ourselves? That's really tough. The forgiveness thing is not easy. Rebecca Ann Parker says, our calling is to witness how anguishing the aftermath of human violence can be healed. We need to speak as wise serpents who know human capacity for atrocities, cruelties, stupidities, idolatries, and short-sighted, self-serving strategies. We cannot flinch in the presence of evil. Our job then is to proclaim what is moral, what is just, what reverences life, what gives hope in the face of violence, what restores life when it has been fractured by human cruelty, what is worthy of our ultimate loyalty, what sustains us in the long night of pain. I agree, but how? That becomes an essential question of how. I think we all agree that somewhere, someplace, when things are happening that are bad, we have to learn to deal with it more than just resentment and grievance. Because resentment and grievance means more resentment and grievance, and then you have a round robin of revenge and revenge and revenge. There was that book, I'm digressing it because I just remember this. There was the book Guns, Germs, and Steel. And the author of that book is down in Papua New Guinea. And one of the people in Papua New Guinea said, you know, 13,000 years ago, we were all the same. What happened? And the author and the person answered, I think one of the things that happened was that in our area, we never broke the circle of violence and revenge. We never learned how to break the circle. And so we got stuck in our own resentment and grievance and never grew, never got beyond it. We're in like a cyclical hell of resentment and violence and grievance. There's a lot to think about that. And so while it's hard to forgive, if you don't forgive, does it make it worse? How do you forgive and when do you forgive? The famous thing of forgiveness is remorse, restitution, and regeneration. In short, it's not just enough to forgive, but you've got to show something about the forgiveness. Talk is cheap. How do you show in your actions what forgiveness really is? A side note to that, when I was at Camp Happy, I remember when I was in this group, and the leader of the group was a former well-known physician who his brain was basically fried by alcohol, and he was doing this as he was recovering. And he said to everybody, all right, Claus, I'm going to single you out. You will not give any words of I'm sorry. You will not write any letters, you're sorry because of what your alcohol did. He said, you're too good at writing and speaking. Your only show of real remorse is to remain sober for the rest of your life. And good sober, not angry sober. It's not enough to say you're sorry. It's not enough to go to rehab. You got to do it. You got to do it. Oh, Pat wanted to know, why is the recording stopped? Because when we publish this, we cannot publish the music. We cannot publish the music because it's copyrighted.
No, I was telling you that the recording was not stopped when the videos were playing.
Oh, okay. Well, let's take care of that afterwards. All right. Now, next question. How do we forgive ourselves? Now, this gets to be an interesting one. Do you forgive yourselves for paths chosen that were not good? Everybody here has made a mistake or mistakes when you've tried to make a decision. Do I do this or I do that? And how many times have we chosen the wrong path? Yeah, that's a goodie. And have we ever forgiven ourselves for that? How many times have we not chosen to do anything and thought that was smart and found out it was even worse? Yes, choosing the wrong path is bad. Not choosing any path and being kind of arrogant. Well, I chose not to choose. That's action, and found out it made things worse. How about words that you said and you were sorry for them? Everybody here has shot your mouth off and said things you didn't mean to say. Am I right? Am I right? Everybody here has done that. And everybody here has said words, has not said words. When you could have spoken up, you didn't. We're all guilty of that. Don't think the preacher is putting himself on some pulpit and looking at everybody and say, you, we're all in this together. The whole bunch of us. Places we've gone, we shouldn't have gone. Places where we should have gone, we didn't. Words we said we shouldn't have said. Words we didn't say when we should have. And what about relationships? Oh, this is a goodie. How do we get along with our family? I just finished doing this when Confucius was talking about outer virtues. He is about filial piety. And I said, you have your biological family, but what if your biological family, watch your language, Kenneth, your biological family and you don't quite work? What if you are a square peg in a round hole? What if you're absolutely convinced, for instance, that one of your siblings was switched by accident at birth into your family in the birthing room? Well, what if you found out that somehow God doesn't like you and placed you in this family because you don't belong at all? Oh, yes, that happens all the time. My mother and I could not be in the same room for more than 15 minutes. So what do you do with family? Now, some of you are unlike my wife, by the way, has a very strange family. They all get along. I've never met and by the way, she does not have a family. I remember the third date we went on, and we were at her brother's stepsister's I never pronounced this right, post-quinceanera party. So I said to Maria Teresa, it's nice that your brother invited the whole block for a party. She says, Kenneth, what are you talking about? I said, all these people, they're from all over the neighborhood, right? She said, Kenneth, this is my family. I said, this is not a family, this is a tribe. Do you know what a family is? A family is, this is a tribe. She said, I have 9 brothers and sisters who all have kids, and they have kids, and everybody all has kids. Her mother had an 85th birthday party and 120 people showed up. It was all family. What is that? I mean, there was my brother and I, my mother, that was it. I mean, what this is a nation in itself. Her family actually gets along. What is that all about? So, some families actually get along. I have to remind myself that. Others is a work in progress still. And so I said to my students, sometimes you have a biological family, but then you have a comfort family. Do any of you have like a sister that's not a biological sister? Do any of you have like a brother who's not a biological brother? Do any of you have an auntie or somebody like that, or an uncle who takes the place of a parent? Interestingly enough, I forgot all about this, and I told Christine Sloan this on a thing on Facebook just this morning. I forgot. There are 2 women in my life who are absolutely incredibly powerful, and I will never forget. My stepfather's mother was Ukrainian. How could I have forgotten that at this time? It was interesting. She was, just imagine an older, heavy, loving, kind, just a big, And I remember she would come down and babysit when my mother and I said fathers would go away, and I would break something and I would lose it. And she would come over and just hug me and give me warmth and loves, something my mother never did. And you know who the other woman who ever did that was my wife's mother. Interestingly enough, the two women in my wife who gave me the kind of motherly love that you're supposed to have, and a lot of us don't get, was my Ukrainian stepfather's mother, my grandmother. Remember her vividly, and Carmen Estrada, who would hug me and give me loves and just wonderful. And I all told you about the time I was visiting my parents and and I went to stop in and say hello to them. And they came to the door and said, "You don't have an appointment." I told you that story. They got mad that I didn't have an appointment. I was 2 blocks away doing a wedding. And I stopped in to say hi on the spur of the moment. They said, "You don't have an appointment. You don't belong here. Why are you here? These are just my parents." Meanwhile, you go to see Carmen, my wife's mother, hugs, kisses, stay. I mean, go figure. So you have to make your own family sometimes. You have a biological family and you have a comfort family. Now, some of you have both in the same, but family, how do we negotiate family? Wives, husbands, boyfriends, girlfriends, and I put down others. I don't know what that means. How do you deal with that? My student said to me, "You have a happy marriage. How did you have that?" I said, "You did not know what happened to me before the marriage. I turned making relationships go bad into an art form." They said, "What does that mean?" I said, "Name something that you could do to mess up a relationship," and I did it. I was an art form. I mean, this is, they said, "So if you have hope." He said, "How old were you when you finally got it together?" I said, "You don't want to know. It was long, long ago and far, far away, but it took that long." How do we learn to forgive ourselves in all this mess? How do you learn, when I talked last week about memories that have power over us when they're bad? And those memories that have power over us when they're bad are because we haven't learned to forgive ourselves. We haven't moved on. So part of forgiveness is not only learning to forgive others and moving on so we break the cycle of revenge and grievance and resentment. How do we learn to forgive ourselves? How do we learn to embrace the fact that, yes, we make mistakes. Yes, we acknowledge that. Yes, we try to do something about it. And yes, we try to move on. I think of an interesting conundrum. Isn't it interesting how sometimes we have no trouble forgiving others and get mad at ourselves instantly? Or sometimes we forgive ourselves very quickly and can't seem to forgive anybody else. I want to, and let us not forget, by the way, the infamous "I'm sorry, but." Have you ever had that one? "I'm sorry, but." I'm sorry, but if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have. Yes, yes. Now I want to leave you with, and I hope you'll enjoy this, 2 examples, 3 quotes, and 1 story. Kind of an interesting way to wrap up a share. 2 examples, 3 quotes, and 1 story. The 2 examples. Jesus, when he's surrounded by nothing but peasants, poor people, that's basically who he worked with, who had a lot of resentment and grievance, said in his famous Sermon on the Plain, "If you wish to be forgiven, you have to forgive." And whether he said this or not personally, it is fascinating to me that the Christian communities that followed him remembered him and would have him saying as he's dying, "Forgive them." Whether he said it or the communities remembered or thought he would have said it, it is interesting, as he's dying horribly, he said, "Forgive them." Gandhi is assassinated by an extremist Hindu, shot point blank 3 times. And what does he do? He taps his head as he dies in a heap, which is the Hindu way of forgiveness. 2 powerful examples. 3 quotes. To forgive is to set the prisoner free and discover the prisoner was you. The Hindus in their ancient Vedas were to write in the Bhagavad Gita, if you want to see the brave, look for those who forgive. If you want to see the heroic, look for those who can love in return for hatred. We must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. Martin Luther King. And finally, I want to read to you a true story because I can't think of a better way to end. Johann Christoph Arnold was to write this true story. John Plummet, a helicopter pilot during Vietnam, helped organize a napalm raid on the village of Trang Bang in 1972, a bombing you all saw. It was immortalized by the prize-winning photograph of one of its victims. Do you all remember that? The 9-year-old girl set on fire. For the next 24 years, John was haunted by that photograph. A naked, burning 9-year-old running toward the camera with plumes of black smoke following in the sky behind her. In an almost unbelievable coincidence, John met Kim at an event at the Vietnam War Memorial on Veterans Day in the United States, Washington, D.C., 1996. In a speech to the crowd, Kim introduced herself as the girl in the famous photograph. She still suffered immensely from her burns, she said, but she was not bitter. Behind that picture of me, thousands and thousands of people died, and nobody took their picture, she said. Kim went on to say that she had forgiven the men who had bombed her village. John pushed through the crowds and identified himself as a former pilot in Vietnam and said that he felt responsible for the bombing of her village. He says, Kim saw my grief, my pain, and my sorrow. She held out her arms. She held out her arms to me and embraced me. All I could say was, I'm sorry, over and over again. And at the same time, she was saying, it's all right. I forgive you. Writes the author, it is a mystery. It is a mystery. He still can't quite grasp how a short conversation could wipe away a 24-year nightmare. We need to learn to wipe away our nightmares. We all need to learn to forgive. It may take time, but that's okay. But let's do it. Amen. Those words by Channing, I just realized I should print out in the bulletin so we can sing along with them, and I will from now on. Jesus was a Galilean peasant, a carpenter by trade. He learned from his father. And Christianity is always talked about the Last Supper, but what they forgot was that most of the time he spent his time with people having very, very simple meals. And in the very, very beginning, people forget this. The first time Christians met, they did not have high Eucharist and holy masses. They had agape meals. They were love meals in which people gathered, and they brought simple bread, and they brought simple bread. Sometimes they brought fruit. They had watered down wine, and the idea was to offer love and welcome and reach out a hand of friendship and offer support to one another in the very, very earliest times they gathered. The Apostle Paul writes about agape meals. And so we here, when we first started, wanted to make sure that everybody was welcome. And before we left, we offered a meal of welcome, a meal of friendship, a meal of saying you are here and we're glad you're with us. And so even though we're by Zoom, we symbolically offer the bread and the cup to everyone here. You are welcome. You are here, and we deeply care and support. Part of that also is a reminder that we have a black chip. And the black chip is a reminder that if you have something that's gone wrong, this is a good time to remind yourself of that and work on it. Maybe if you need to forgive somebody during the week. Now, does anybody need to return a black chip? If you need to return a black chip, you hold it up. And if you don't have any black chips at home, let me know and we'll email them to you. Does anybody had a bad week and they need to pick a black chip up and say, I need to work on it? Let us then repeat the famous words as we have them in our service. For those after we have a meal, we all gather together, for those for whom it worked and for those whom it didn't work. But we all gather together and we would hold hands. And if you would say and repeat after me, promise me you'll remember, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, and sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. Let us pray. May the blessings of God be upon us in this hour and in the days to come, that we may seek the truth more devotedly, that we may think more independently, that we may reflect more searchingly, that we may know ourselves more completely, that we may forgive more quickly, we may pray more thoughtfully, we may act more courageously, we may live more nobly. Our parting hymn, our parting music is taken from Kai Thomas, a Welsh singer, and stay, if you will, afterwards so we can have a parting blessing and a greeting. And now may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. Amen. Before we go, thoughts of peace and love for Ukraine, if you would. Thank you all for being here. May your thoughts, whatever they may be towards peace this week and an end to all bad things.
I would like to say something before we end. Besa had a birthday on February 22nd, 2022, and she may not know that I'm the self-appointed card lady from All Souls, and I made you a birthday card, but I don't have your address. And it says, we are tickled pink. You're part of the flock. All Souls. I'll send it to you when Ken gives me your address.
Thank you. I love it.
You're welcome.
I'm glad to be a part of this flock.
And I would like to compliment the tech person today with such a smooth transition in and out of the music from the sermon and the rest of the service. And I really appreciated the nice flow of things. Thank you.
It was very nice. Yeah.
Grimmy bought 9 sticks of RAM, which now gives him enough RAM to go to the moon and back in 2 minutes. He was explaining something he did tech-wise, and evidently, obviously, it worked. It was wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to jump in and let you know that before I hopped into All Souls Miami service, I was attending via Zoom the fellowship, the UU Fellowship of Stores, Connecticut. And that's my new congregation up here. And we're still meeting on Zoom. So I'm doing back-to-back services.
Wow.
And before I left their service, everybody said to send their love to UU, my UU family in Miami, All Souls. So
Oh, wow. Well,
sending that to you.
hey, we need to do a sister thing with them.
Oh, that would be lovely.
There you go.
Or
Why not?
brother.
Yeah, why not?
Go ahead. All right, fine. We'll do it. Well, give me their minister's name or whoever's in charge, and I'll see how we can do something for them. That'd be cool.
Yes, we have a part-time consulting minister there,
That's fine.
and most of it's lay led.
Well, whoever I speak to, we'll do it. We'll put it together.
Fantastic.
And you know,
I'll bring it up.
and if something ever happens that the minister can't make it, they can always come with us for a Sunday.
That would be great.
It's free. Such a deal. I mean, such a deal.
Ken, can I interrupt for a minute?
You're never interrupting. Go ahead.
With the survey that we have asked people to do, some people may have a hard time accessing it. If you want to just go ahead and email the answer to the questions to me, I'm willing to compile everything. I actually myself am having a hard time getting into it. So just send me the email and I will add it to what we get through the survey.
Okay, just Mary, just remind me when you have a chance, email me your email and just remind me because and then I will send that out as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody has access to it. I know some of us that are over 35 don't have the technology skills that a lot of people that are younger do. So just, I want everybody's voice from around the world.
Everybody here is under 30, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, no. No, my baby's turning 32. It's not true.
Donald, baby Donald. I love it. I love it. This is from remote parts of Florida, Tampa.
Yes, yes.
Any other comments before we go? It's good to see everybody. Thank you much. Thank you much. And we will see you in 2 weeks. And oh, I know what I need to do. I'll get back to you about that too, but I may be asking if we have any as a volunteer for able to use their house for a house church service in March. We'll be able to be at rallies from now on after it's starting in April. But if somebody has some space.
Volunteer.
Huh? Oh, we'll come up to Port Orange. Yes, we're coming up to Port Orange. All right, everybody, be safe and well. I'm Cecilia. Nice hairdo. I wish you know, these women in their hair. I'm so jealous. I have no hair. All right. Be safe and well, everybody. Be safe and well.
Bye.
Yeah.
You too.
Everybody be safe and well.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.